Hi guys, my name is Tom and I'm the tech chap, and welcome to my review of the Moto X Play. As the mid-range model in Motorola's 2015 lineup between the budget Moto G and the more expensive upcoming Moto X style, this 5.5-inch Moto X Play has a lot to offer. Normally I begin reviews by talking about the design and the display, however today I'm going to start by discussing the battery life of the Moto X Play. With a massive 3630 mAh battery, the Moto X Play will last you 2 full days. As with any phone, if you're playing intensive games at maximum brightness all the time, it won't last nearly that long, but with my typical usage of checking social media, web browsing and playing some music through Spotify with auto brightness enabled, it did last me almost 50% longer than my Samsung Galaxy S6, which is my normal phone. It took an impressive 10 hours and 10 minutes to run down on the Geekbench battery benchmark, which is nearly 5 hours longer than the iPhone 6 Plus, Galaxy S6 and the LG G4. But that's not all. The Moto X Play also features Motorola's turbo charging technology, which they boast is the fastest charging technology on any phone on the market at the moment. From my experience, actually, yeah, it pretty much is. It charged from 0 to 35% in just 15 minutes, which beat the Galaxy S6, which also has fast charging, which only gained 28% in the same period of time. So its incredible battery performance and fast charging is a huge selling point for the Moto X Play. And despite featuring a 5.5-inch 1080p display, it manages to outlast flagships that cost nearly twice as much. Speaking of the display, with a 1080p resolution, the 5.5-inch display has a pixel density of 401 pixels per inch. That doesn't quite match the top-end phones like the Galaxy S6, which has a whopping 577 ppi, but if you consider the Moto X Play has the same screen size and resolution as the iPhone 6 Plus, and therefore has the same density, which costs in the region of 3 times as much, the Moto X Play does have a pretty impressive display. It's also fairly bright, making it nice and easy to use outdoors in bright light conditions, and although the viewing angles aren't quite as impressive, the whites are reasonably accurate and the colours are quite nice overall, if not a little bit dull, perhaps a little bit washed out. It's not the brightest or punchiest or most vibrant display on the market. It won't blow you away, but it's pretty good. And Gorilla Glass 3 protects the display, but due to the lack of any sort of oleophobic coating, it is a magnet for fingerprints. You really do get your fingerprints all over it. With a very similar design to the Moto G and Moto X style, the Moto X Play doesn't really stand out as a particularly beautiful device, but it looks reasonably smart, it looks simple, and I think it looks quite practical, almost perhaps utilitarian. The plastic trim and metal looking, but still plastic edge, are very similar to the Moto G. At 10.9mm thick and weighing 169 grams, it feels quite dense in the hand, but it is comfortable to hold, thanks to the rounded corners and the back tapering in to about 5mm on the edge, so it's surprisingly compact for a 5.5-inch phone. And it does feel significantly smaller than the iPhone 6 Plus and even the LG G4, both of which have 5.5-inch displays. This is in part thanks to the grippy rubber texture on the back cover, which prevents it slipping out of your hand. It also has an above average 74.4% screen to body ratio, which means it's relatively compact for the screen and for the screen size and the size of the device as a whole. With a non-removable battery and the nano SIM and microSD card slots accessed from the top of the phone, there's really no functional reason for actually being able to take off the back cover, which is removable, although you can buy different covers, and if you buy the phone online through Motorola's Moto Maker website, you can also customize the look of it, so it is more of just a visual aesthetic look. There's no functional reason behind actually being able to take the back off. In addition, there's a 3.5mm jack on the top, micro USB 2.0 port on the bottom with the fast charging technology we spoke about. It has a volume rocker and a textured power button on the right hand side, with nothing on the left. It's completely flush on the left. On the front are what appear to be dual speakers, but actually the top one only acts as a call speaker, as an earpiece for when you're making calls. Only the lower speaker on the bottom bezel is actually for sound. In terms of quality, it's not the best. It's quite loud, and I do like the fact that Motorola have placed it on the front, as most competitors do still relegate it to the back of the phone. And although you can cover it quite easily if you're holding the phone in landscape mode, your thumb can sort of obscure it if you're playing games. It's still quite good. It gets quite loud, as I say, but it does lack a bit of punch. It lacks warmth. It's a bit tinny. Similarly, call quality is sort of reasonable, but nothing to write home about. Pretty average all through. Inside, the Moto X Play is a Snapdragon 615 processor and 2GB of RAM. It also comes with either 16 or 32GB of internal storage, depending on the model you choose, but both do have microSD support for up to cards of 128GB. Running the latest Android 5.1.1, the combination of an efficient yet capable quad-core processor, the 2 gigs of RAM, and a near-stock Android Lollipop UI makes the Moto X impressively fast and responsive. It scored over 35,000 in the Antutu benchmark, which means that although it doesn't compete necessarily with the top-end phones in the benchmarks, and it really isn't trying to, the most important thing is it runs the latest games and apps well. And although it's not the fastest to load apps, and then there are some slowdowns, perhaps in performing certain tasks, on the whole it is very impressive for a mid-range phone. With almost no bloatware and a pretty much stock Android UI, those who wanted a Nexus 6 device but didn't like the size of a 6-inch phone, this Moto X Play is a solid alternative. Motorola are rumoured to be making the next Nexus device, but stock Android phones are rare and highly sought after, so the Moto X Play, as of course is the more expensive style version, are definitely worth considering. Motorola have added a few of their own features though. It's not a lot and it's not bloatware by any means, but it includes the Moto Migrate app, which helps you get started with your new phone. The Moto app also offers a range of voice and notification settings, as well as motion gestures in the form of a double twist to open the camera app. Strangely though, that it appears that the karate chop motion to turn on the flashlight, which is on the Moto G, is absent from the X Play. Boasting a 21 megapixel f2.0 rear camera and a 5 megapixel front camera, the Moto X Play offers impressive camera performance for a mid-range phone. It doesn't compete with the top-end Galaxy S6, LG G4, iPhone 6 in terms of consistent quality, features and low light performance, but it does produce nice looking and detailed shots in well-lit environments. The colours are nice too, and although noise does become a bit of an issue in darker conditions, and the low light mode doesn't really do anything to improve this, but you can use the flash of course, which is a nice addition and does help, but using the flash never really looks quite as good. On the whole, it's pretty solid. The camera app is very similar to a stock Android one, and although taking photos is very fast, one thing I did find was a bit difficult is focusing when I'm taking a close-up shot. I found it focusing a little bit difficult. I didn't always focus on what I wanted. HDR works well though, and I'd recommend leaving it on. In terms of the front camera, the 5 megapixels is also pretty decent, but it suffers in the same way as the rear one in terms of relatively poor low light quality. It's capable enough and reasonably detailed in good light, and it will take a good selfie of you and your mates, but that's about it. With a maximum resolution of 1080p, video performance is also very solid. It has a nice dynamic range and quickly adjusts to light and dark areas. For example, the sky isn't blown out as you go from the ground to the sky. Again, noise can be a slight issue and footage often does appear a bit blurry unless you're very, very stable. There is a slow motion mode, but the 540p resolution is quite low and it doesn't look particularly good. After the battery performance, the Moto X Play's camera is the next big feature that Motorola is shouting about. For the price, and considering the competition, the Moto X Play does have an impressive camera despite its flaws. It may be a mid-range phone, but the Moto X Play performs closer to a top-end flagship than it does a budget phone. Fantastic battery performance, near-stock Android UI, and very competitive pricing makes the Moto X Play one of the best smartphones of 2015. The Moto X Play is available in most regions around the world, including right here in the UK, for around £250, but that you can probably get that a bit cheaper already. Unfortunately though, Motorola isn't planning on releasing it in the US, although there are reports it may be released under a sort of Droid Max name from Verizon for around $300. The mid-range market is getting more competitive, with the likes of the OnePlus 2 offering even slightly better specs, more flagship style specs, for a similar, although again slightly higher price. But it's fair to say the OnePlus 2 is more of a direct competitor to the more expensive Moto X style rather than the X Play. So overall, the Moto X Play is a great phone and I highly recommend it. If you're interested in buying one, you can check out the links in the description below, and as always I hope you've enjoyed this review and found it helpful. Please do like and subscribe, and if you have any comments or questions, leave those in the comments as well. I'd love to hear from you guys. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers guys.